So my background is in economics. I studied economics at the university, and I ended up being one of the youngest female traders in a trading floor in London. What was really in my blood was like the drive for power, success, and money at the time, which for me meant like everything.
Hi, I'm Dr. D from Dr. D University.
And hi, I'm Princess Gaia.
And hi, I'm Mar Michelle Häusler, and I'm really excited to be here with you today.
We're really glad to have you today. And a lot of our international viewers may not know much about you and the work you do. So please tell us a little bit more about yourself and your business.
It's a whole journey, so I'm just trying to think about where to start. I don't know why it was such a driving force. I've done a lot of work around it, but really to understand the intricacies, I guess it's what you're conditioned as a young person, and it was a big thing at the time for me to prove myself a lot and to be like, you know, I'm a woman, but in a man's world, and I can make it too, and that was kind of like my motive. And so I ended up, a long story, but being one of the highest producing women on a trading floor with like 100 men, really outperforming for 2 years. But when I came to the end of this, I realized that I'd outperformed all my targets. So I was like, I want to be this by the time I'm 30. I want to make this amount of money. I want to be MD. And I reached 26, and I'd been promoted every year. I was making more money than I could have imagined. And I was like, and now what? And there was a big emptiness inside of my heart. There was a big hole inside of me because I'd kind of achieved everything materially I wanted to achieve on the outside. You know, power, status. I kind of kicked everyone's ass, which is what I wanted to do at that point. But I'd forgotten my inner intricate values, what really meant something to me. And you could say I went through like not a burnout, but yeah, I just started questioning everything. And it was coming up to bonus time, and I decided, you know what, like either I stay here or I leave now, because I will never leave otherwise. It's a bit like the golden handcuffs that people talk about. That really does exist, because it's a bit more detailed how to explain it, but you get forward paid. So you don't get paid everything now, but you get something in the future, and again and again. So you're always like, it's like the donkey and the carrot, basically. You're the donkey and the carrot's there, and you're like, I'm going to get there. And I kind of sat there and I was like, okay, I can either stay here or I can walk now. And it was a big step to walk, because it was the top of my career. Everything was going well. And my friends, my family, everyone was like, what are you doing? Like, everyone is dying to have a job here, and you're just walking out. And I remember leaving and saying, I need a sabbatical. I need time for myself. And they said, okay, take this time. But if you don't come back, we're going to take all your deferred shares and bonus. And I remember I had like a tiny amount in cash compared to what I was going to be paid. And I said, you can take all of that, but you can't take my life. Like, it was so important for me at that time to really like find my freedom from it. And so when I left, it's been like a journey of years. I would say, when did I leave? So it's almost 10 years. Next year will be 10 years that I left finance. But it was like an inner exploration of like what really made sense for me. What is this life about? What really brought meaning? Because at the time my friends were getting married, buying houses, and I thought, okay, I can do all of this, which is all great, but I was empty doing it. I think, you know, I'm doing it now. I live in a place, I have a son, but it didn't come from that space, and I wasn't really understanding it. There was like something missing. That connection to life, that connection to purpose, that connection to meaning, and the connection to nature and everything outside. We were sitting in these rooms trading bonds. I was trading during the crisis, so you would know 2007, 8, 9, like Lehman Brothers, AIG, they were going down. I was trading all those bonds, the Irish, Spanish, Portuguese banks, and making like millions on this, and people's lives were affected on the back of this. You know, we were sitting in these rooms completely disconnected, like going out partying, doing this. And then I was coming back and I was like, but what are the consequences of my actions here? And what really hit me was when I went traveling and I met people traveling, Irish people had mortgages 5 times the amount the houses were worth. And people telling me stories about people committing suicide and what was happening. And now I live in Portugal, one of the most affected countries at the time. And I'm hearing of the consequences of what was happening. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, we're sitting in these rooms completely disconnected, and this is affecting individual lives. And so this drove me on this whole journey of exploration. So I ended up living between India and Brazil, around the world, questioning life, living with spiritual communities, intentional communities, and by synchronicity. And I followed this path of flow and really following my intuition, I would call it, which I was kind of cutting off at the time. So that for me, it was like, I'm not going to feel, I'm just going to be a robot kind of thing, because everyone inherently in finance, that's the thing, is a great person. But I don't know what it is. When you walk in those doors or when you're in there, it's like we all put on that same machine mode and we're like going for it. But when you come out, you have families, you have lives, you know? So for me, it's that question of like, what's happening here? And so I ended up at Schumacher College doing a master's in economics for transition. So transitioning into a new world, a new way. It was really inspiring with Satish Kumar. We read Small is Beautiful by E.F. Schumacher. That's what the school is based on, and studied a lot on ecology. So really looking at like the natural systems change, everything from pitch of copra to, it was just so mind-blowing that I started seeing life from another angle. And it took me like a few months when my paradigms were like shifting. I'm like, my first bachelor's in economics was all profit maximizing, you know, like, and then I'm sitting there and I'm like, so it's not only about profit, it's about cooperatives. I'm like, really? People do it for that? Like, my head was just like going through like changes and understanding, and there's another way this functions, and all of a sudden we're learning about the mycelium system from nature, and can we live like this, and can we, you know, can we build systems in a different way? And so it just started inspiring me and opening doors to like other ways of seeing things. And I ended up doing my thesis in a community in Brazil, an intentional community, because they wanted their own community currency, and I was very interested in money and community currencies at the time. And so I lived with them for a few months and created the foundation of the Inquiri currency in Piracanga in Bahia in Brazil. And that for me was just incredible, because all the knowledge I'd learned over the past 8 months, I could put into practice. And I was actually seeing that system grow, and it's been 3 years and they're thriving, and they've built like a whole system of blockchain on the back of it to spread resources between different projects. Like it just boomed, like the local economy was really booming, because we started seeing how important local was. And I was talking about this like years ago, and everyone was like, yeah. And now when I'm looking at what's happening in the world, I'm like, well, this is the key, right? Like, this is what's happening. We need to support communities and local. And so going back, but that's where I realized, and my work was born, because we'd implemented the social currency and we'd done all of this, but I realized, okay, if we change the notes and coins on the outside, like the piece of paper or what we're using, but we don't inherently change the way we relate to it, we will have the same issues. It doesn't matter if it's the euro, the dollar, the Bitcoin, whatever it is. If we still relate to it in the same ways, if we're still approaching it with fear, scarcity, out of speculation, what motives are driving us behind it? And so this is where the workshop that I'm working with was born from, because I started questioning, okay, so what is our relationship to it? Let's say money is a neutral energy and we charge it with it. What are we charging it with? Probably like our own imprint, but decades before, our ancestors' imprint, maybe fear, maybe things that I inherit from wars, the Great Depression, whatever has been lived, we're carrying it with us. And so how do we move forward into a new understanding or way of cooperating if we're carrying that with us? So that was kind of the work that spun out of this, and it's moved into the direction also of purpose, really looking at like, what is your life purpose? So if money were no object, if you did not have to work for money, what would you be doing? You know, what did you come here to do? Because I really don't believe that we were born to make money, to pay our rent and our food and work 9 to 5 and that's it. I think everyone has a gift, an inherent spark that brought us here. And I think this is what life is about, finding that and expressing yourself. Because if everyone does that, we will live in a world that's like blossoming, right? Like, but everyone's gift that's not given is missing to everyone else. And so this is kind of where my work has been going in that direction. And more recently, we're just doing a pilot for a new methodology I've developed for young people between 14 to 18, just about going to university and finding out what they want to do, learning about the topics of regeneration, not just sustainability, but really regeneration, looking at money, purpose, connection to yourself and others, and then empowering them with tools to create projects, a livelihood, what they want to build in the world. And we're running one for schools now, and then looking at doing summer camps possibly, and really expanding this. And it was just so funny. This is just the last thing I'm going to add, is that we opened applications because it was hard to get into schools at the moment. So we did it online, fully oversubscribed, with 11-year-olds writing into us saying, I want to be a changer. I want to change the world. You know, it was so touching to see. And also, like, we said, okay, it's between 14 to 18. And we had applications from 22 to 28-year-olds saying, I need this program. And I realized, actually, there's a gap for, like, there's a space for all of us at any point in our lives to get in touch with our purpose and to make that change. And I think that's the important step. So this is, in a nutshell, my journey, I guess, the work I've been doing and how I've ended up here.
For the people who are stuck in their jobs, how did you realize this emptiness in yourself? Were there any signs you had? So any signs telling you? And how did you find the courage to actually go and to travel into the unknown?
These are very good questions, because it's funny. I always say to people, like, life gives us little signs and then they get bigger, right? Because we're not listening. And unfortunately, sometimes it gets really tough for people, because you can have a big accident or something, or life is like, you know, you're not going to go in that direction. And for me at the time, I was just super ill, like not sick, like I couldn't go to work, but I would always have this infection, that, like, and I could feel that my body was not well, but I was also not nourishing myself while I was in overdrive, and I was getting really tired. And it was like, it was very strange, because I had like this, so I was traveling every weekend, like I was partying, doing, you know, you see the movies, like I was like, yeah, I'm living this life. And there was one weekend where I stayed at home, and I literally had this huge experience where I just had a big insight. Like, I was sitting on my bed, and it just became clear to me, like this, you might say spiritual experience or whatever you want to call it. It's very hard to describe, but I just saw a plane, and I knew I had to travel in a noose. And it looked, I was like, you know, I'm not going to survive anymore, like, if I'm not going to take that step. And also that Christmas, apart from being ill, like things happened at work that were not really aligned with my values. I was being told that I would be paid something, but I wasn't. And I thought, you know, is this really what I'm aligned with? And then my father got really ill that Christmas as well. And I started questioning, well, if he's ill and you know, this is, it made me question what life was on a deeper level. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to take that kind of step out of there. And I feel really grateful that I did it at that time. I know people who need a big nudge from life. So I feel really blessed, because at the time I started meditating like a year before. But I started and I was full in finance. And I remember my mom said, just go there. And I rocked up at the teacher's like half an hour late on a Saturday, completely hungover. And he goes, would you like a cup of tea? And I looked at him, I'm like, this is the first time anyone's been so, like, you know, I hadn't stopped, you know, and I'm like, oh. And so he said to me, you know, I think 5 minutes of meditation could really help you every day. And I was like, I don't have 5 minutes. And he was like, 1 minute. I'm like, no. He's like, okay, just do this invocation. It will really help you. I'm like, okay, I can do it on the way to work, like walking into the office. So I started with that, and that little gap gave me the space to hear myself. You know, gave me that courage to the second question you kind of asked, to really hear what's inside, because I feel like we can be so much in overdrive, so much on our phones, bombarded from the world, other people's opinions, you know, that we don't hear what we want. And if we don't make that space, we're constantly in, like, you could say the hamster wheel, or constantly like responding to life and reacting, instead of like going in and feeling like, okay, what is it I want to do, and how do I take my space? And from that little instance of doing this invocation, I still remember it now. It was like 5 lines, walking into work, and I was like, oh, and I had one Red Bull in the hand and my cigarette in the other, which I don't drink or smoke anymore, but going, oh, I need to do this quickly. Okay, oh, let me just do this. It turned into like 5 minutes of meditation. And by the time I left work, I was meditating 45 minutes before going to the office, and I was getting there super early in the morning at like 6:37, and it was part, and I just couldn't do without it. It was like, that has to happen. And I think that's what really gave me the courage, the space, the awareness, and the ability to trust myself to walk out at that time, which was such a big, I guess, shift. It's that balance of like the structure versus the fluidity. And I think that we come in such a structured world, and that fluidity, bringing that back in was a big kind of driving point for me to connect the two and say, okay, now it's time to make that shift.
I think you've mentioned in a quite thorough way about advice for aspiring entrepreneurs, but is there anything else you'd like to touch on? What advice do you have?
Wow, there's so much I've learned along the journey, and I'm still learning, right? It doesn't stop. I would say really follow your heart and your inner calling. Like, I was called like crazy, nuts along the way. Like, people were like, she's lost the plot. Like, what is she doing? And of course, I still doubt myself today, right? I think we all go through stages where we're like, am I really doing this right? Or, and just keep to that firmness, it's like, really just walk your path, because like, I feel like it's like I always knew I wanted to do it, and I had this vision, and sometimes you're like, oh, I'm just crazy, and the whole world's telling me I'm crazy and I'm going to shut it down. Don't do that, because it's your imagination, it's your creativity. And like, everything that we have in this material world, like everything we live with, has been invented by someone, right? Has been put here through someone's creativity, someone's imagination. Like, I'm learning a lot. Like, for example, and this is a big part of my journey, and I'm happy to share it. Like, I can go into this mode of like trader. So I came back from years of meditating and ashrams, like, great. And then when I came back to the world, I went into trader mode, and now I was like working all day, not having lunch, and I couldn't kind of get that adjustment. And I was like, overpower, I need to do it like this. But that doesn't work either. And so now I'm building in time, like, to do things that nurture me as well. So today I did pottery, for example. And that really brought like another quality in from which I can learn. And actually, you think you're like wasting time because you're not executing, but you're getting so much more from it that you don't see, that intangible. And that for me has been a huge lesson of like finding that space and making that space. It's like you have a driving force to go, and it might seem like you're just wasting an hour of your time, or you're just crazy. But when you look back, every single step of the journey makes what it is today. And sometimes we don't see the thread. I think in indigenous cultures, they talk about the golden thread that connects everything. We don't see that, but when we look back, it just makes so much sense. So I always feel like it's just trusting yourself and taking that step. And you know what? Really don't fear making mistakes. Like, there is no mistake. It's just a learning. If you get up from it and you learn, like, keep going. Like, I don't know how it is, but I say to people, my dad's German, my mom's Chinese. I come from the two cultures of that. Really hardworking, but also built the two biggest walls in the world, right? So there's a lot to break down and a lot of working. And I can be like, but it's like letting go, going into the flow, like, allowing that, I don't know, to find that way and to trust. And I've done like funding applications, trying to pitch things, and then feeling like let down. No, I'm not going to get this. And then someone walks up and just believes in you, and you're like, yeah. Or you share it and people are like, yeah, I connect to this. Like, just keep going, keep sharing, keep connecting, keep learning. Since I've had my son, I see it, right? Because we think we should be perfect the second we do things. And I'm very hard on myself, and I'm sure a lot of us can connect to this. I look at him and he's trying to crawl and he falls over and he's trying again. And it's a constant process of trying and learning. And then he realizes, okay, he needs to move like this and then this. So I'm like, why can't I adapt that in my life, right? I think that I should be able to set up a company straight away and be a great entrepreneur and make millions or whatever, we have in our head, or know how to work with people in this way. That no, it's just a learning. It's engage with life, get the feedback, engage again. And I think it's constant feedback. If we look at it as feedback instead of mistakes, I think we can take a huge leap forward.
You talked about you in the male's world. Are there any experiences that you remember from where you had struggles or even where you had advantages?
Yes. Yeah, I think okay, there we have the inner male and female, but we still outwardly have a sort of body, or, you know, now there's obviously many changes in the world. I don't want to say this sex or that sex or whatever we are in, but this does exist. I remember I wanted to be a trader at the time because there was a P&L, there was a number, and no one could say anything, right? Like, if that's the number next to my name, then what are you going to say to me, right? That's what I'm making. And for me, that was really important to prove myself on some level. And I think, of course, as a woman, I was speaking to my clients, you know, like, it's different speaking to another male, and I can see that in hindsight now. But I also had fears around that, being a woman in that world, you know, like, there was a lot of, I don't want to call it sexism, but maybe you could call it that. You know, they were making jokes about women on the trading floor. My boundary was always like, you can laugh about all these women, do whatever you want. I'm a woman here. Just don't talk to me about it, and don't talk about me like this, and have respect for me. And those were kind of my boundaries. But that's still happening in the world. And of course, we still struggle with male entrepreneurs having more funding. VC, you know, there's all this thing about VC funding going to more males, more support for males. That's happening, and I've started like questioning like how we face that, and what that means. And it's a big question, I can say, at the moment for myself, like, because I used to go head on into this and be like, I'm going to fight this, you know, I'm going to enter the male's world. I want to be like a man, like, you know. But what really hit me on a deep level, and I haven't really shared this much, but when I gave birth to my son, I became so vulnerable after that, and it cracked a big shell I had, because I was like, you're not going to mess with me. Like, I'm going to make this. I've always taken care of myself. No one's going to touch me. And all of a sudden I was there. I'd given birth to him and I couldn't lift a finger. I was healing. And all of a sudden this vulnerability hit me. Everything I'd been learning about, this delicacy. And I thought, there is a difference in our roles, right? Like, at this moment in time, I cannot get up to go to work. I just cannot. And I need someone's help. I need support, and I need to reach out. And so I started realizing that we have this like battle going on, almost, even defining like male, female, you know. And I was like, can we find like a way of like supporting each other in different situations, right? Like, even this whole thing of talking about like equality, you know, can we go deeper and see, well, is there really equality? Because I was so much into that, like, I want equality. And then I realized, well, it's not really, because my partner can't breastfeed my son. I learned a lot about where I was boxing things up and how I was seeing things in that view, and the judgments I was making in life about people being in certain roles, positions, how we should be and act. And I'm just realizing it's an ongoing learning and unraveling of this, even this narrative we have around it, right? Like, this narrative that holds it so strong, because if we keep holding this narrative in place, we keep holding that in place. So when we talk about this male, female, what's happened, yeah, there's advantages, disadvantages, there's definitely learnings, opportunities, many things to go through. But I'm going to invite us to like look at a layer deeper and just say, like, you know, can we kind of drop all of that at some point, instead of like being head on, like in the male female battle? Or why don't we all hold each other's hands to rise up together, right? Like, and when I can support, I support, and you can support, you support, and why don't we help everyone who's on the same mission? I think we all, like, inherently, when we go in and look deeper, we're all on a similar mission here.
Well, you know, you're in Lisbon right now, right?
Yeah.
Do you think there's any special advantages to starting any sort of business in Lisbon versus somewhere else that you've ever been?
I don't know. I mean, it's funny time you ask me. Yeah, I've been in Lisbon. I've been incubated in a place called Casa do Impacto. So it's like supported by a big charity here, you know, like it's a hub for like other entrepreneurs to be there, for us to connect. It can be helpful to have places to connect, to be with people. It's vibrant here at the moment in Europe. It's for social entrepreneurship. It's like one of the main places. Like, it's happening because I think post like crises, people had to reinvent like their livelihoods, what they were doing. So there's definitely fruitful ground, but I don't think that prevents you from doing anything. Like, now we have the internet. Most people are working from home. You can connect to almost everyone everywhere. I also think what we're looking at as an entrepreneur is shifting, maybe. Like, you know, all of it, people are questioning, like, do we really need so many things? Do I need to live in that way? So, you know, all these questions are coming in. So I don't necessarily think you need to be in one place to do it. So I just believe that, like, if you're tapped in, if you're where you're supposed to be, you know, if you're really listening to yourself on every level, it doesn't matter physically where you are if you can, you know, make that happen. And of course, on the outside, it can be helpful to connect to people. But at the end, it's like having the courage to stand up inside. And I'm speaking to you, but also for myself, right? Each step of the journey, it's like, come on, take that courage to make that next step, or push yourself that bit further. Or, you know, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, these are like my boundaries. I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable. And that space is where we grow, and that space is where we create. If we're just in the comfort, I mean, what's going to happen there, right? We do the same thing every day and pushing ourselves that way. So I guess it's not the place outside, I would say, but the place inside, and what boundaries or areas you can push and to connect. And I think that's the driving force, that yes towards life, that flow upwards, you know. So that for me kind of breaks all barriers of location, sex, having funding, not having funding, having people believe in it or not. I mean, most of the biggest entrepreneurial stories you hear in the, you know, when you read about Microsoft, when you read about all of the different stories, they started from, I don't know, their garage or their mom's, you know, like, or some, you know, a lot of them just started because there was such a drive and a knowingness that this is the right thing to do, but no one else believed you, and you're still kind of pushing yourself there, right?
Students always ask. They always ask the same question. Did you write a business plan? And if you did, when did you write it? And did you find the exercise helpful?
I wonder what everyone else answers to this. Because I remember I learned it in university, and then I was like, I came back out and I'm like, how do I do this? Like, you know, I mean, no, I never actually wrote one, but sometimes I think, you know, you should really write one, you know, like that could really help you. But I do not want to discredit all of it either, because there are tools that I've needed. You know, there are things that we really need to, like, I discredited like my profit and loss accounting and my balance. You know, I was a bit like, yeah. But no, when it comes down to it, to actually run something, okay, maybe you don't need the full business plan for the 10-year projections and whatever else it could be, because it can change and the world is changing. But there's a reason why things exist, right? Like, it's not like people are just teaching you things that you don't need. You will learn tools from it, and maybe it's not exactly that, but you can iterate something from it. But definitely, I think what's really important is having like a purpose and a vision, and, like, you know, a direction, like, because otherwise you can shoot bullets in every direction. Like, and something I've learned for myself, it's like, well, there's two things. One, when we plant a seed, you know, in the world we live in, we're like, you should do it now, and everything has. But when you plant a seed, it has its time, right? You don't like sprouts, and you don't start yanking the sprout out, going grow faster, right? Everything has its time for, like, evolving. And the other thing I really learned was, like, I can be someone full of ideas and to make, and I start different things. And in nature as well, we prune back, right? We lose leaves, we cut back. And that's something to do too sometimes, to be a bit harder with yourself, but saying, okay, like, where am I putting my energy? You know, is this really like a good direction to go into or not? Like, you know, why am I doing this? Because I want to prove myself, because it's for someone else. Why? And what is my direction? And sometimes it can be bliss, and you think you're going to grow, but actually by pruning back, that's when you get like the fruits that are really the sweetest or the ripest, or, you know, full of the nutrients. And so that's really a lesson I've learned, and I'm learning, and I'm putting into practice much more. But something I'd love to share, because I think that a lot of us have a lot of ideas, and also the one thing, actually, this is a big thing I would say, is like, you have an idea, you have a direction, and life offers you different things. Like, hey, why don't you come and do this project with me? Or why don't you, like, you know, I'll give you funding to whatever it is. And you start going on like these other trajectories, but not actually in the direction you want to go. And I've learned that because I'm very, I'm going to go with the flow. No, sometimes prune back, like stay sharp, keep going in what you've set yourself to go towards. And I'm learning this from going from idea to like product or to whatever it is. There's like a lot of stages in between, and there's a lot of work to be done too. It's not for the faint-hearted. Like I underestimated it, I think. And now I'm on it, I'm like, wow, it takes a lot. Like sometimes I'm like, is it just easier to sit in a company and just, pluck away at the numbers? Okay, but I'm kind of kidding, but it takes something from you, right? To be like, okay, I'm gonna do this. So I really encourage everyone to find that drive within and what makes you feel alive, because that's what you're gonna create. There's this cartoon that I kind of love. It's like there's a tree, and then there's like a monkey and an elephant and loads of different animals. And then it's like, climb up the tree, right? And it's like, like, okay, we're all different. We can't all climb up trees, but some of us can like dig holes or, swim miles. And then if we're all told to do one thing and being measured by one way, then we're kind of missing all the gifts that all the other ways have to offer.
You talked about the magic is in all of us, right? What is your private magic, if you want to share it with us? Is there a message you would bring out into the world of young entrepreneurs? So your magic and a message, please.
Oh my goodness. I mean, what's the magic inside of me? I've never been asked that. I'm wondering what it is. I feel like the magic, and I feel really grateful to be able to live this, is just to be aligned with what I want to do. Like I wake up and I used to be like, I'm going to work, and Mondays were tough, right? And Fridays were like, yeah, thank God it's Friday, and then Thursdays became the new Fridays because Thursday nights. And it's like, since I've kind of found my path and this alignment, so I feel like it's alignment in every part of our lives, right? If your family life isn't good, then it reflects on your work life. If your health isn't good, it reflects. So every aspect of our lives, relationship, family, health, work, leisure, whatever you want to call it, is aligned, because they're not independent from each other. And since I've had this alignment in all of the aspects, and that's really been the work I've been doing. So, it has been tough. I'm not going to say, oh, it's just great. And, it's been a lot of inner work, a lot of questioning, a lot of like looking at myself and questioning myself and looking at also my shadow inside and why am I doing things and my relationships and everything and how I eat and do I take care of myself. But I have like a routine, and I used to not understand when they were like, oh yeah, successful people like read books and have a routine and wake up at this time. Okay, I'm not going to say everyone do it, it's easier said than done, but it really has brought me a lot of structure. Like I have my morning routine, like I do meditate every day, I do my yoga practice or my workout or whatever it is, and that gives me that alignment. And I think since finding that alignment, it allows that magic to flow. It's like the fountain of life to flow. And that's where spontaneity arises. That's where like creativity comes from. That's where this energy comes from that I really believe in. And when people told me that before, I'm like, oh, yeah. But it really does exist. And we really each have it. Like, and I really want everyone to know that, like, it's like, I feel like I'm so fortunate to have found that place that all I want to do is touch that in others. Like, and if there's one person that touches it and sees it in themselves, like they just light the candle for many others, right? So it's about each of us touching that in each other, I feel, and knowing that part of each other and saying like, hey, you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. Like, and we all have our own stories. And I know everyone comes from different backgrounds, has different trauma, has lived through different things. And I'm not saying to discredit it, but there's also strength in it. There's a reason why things happen to you. And we can transform that into real strength to move forward in life, There's tough stories out there. And maybe if it doesn't sound so tough, it's not about the form of the story. We've all gone through something, right? And it's like, can we transform that from the suffering into that flame, into that magic that we can share in the world? Because I think once we transform that, there's so much we can do with it. And it's like making peace, letting go of that story. I think that's been my magic of really making peace with myself, making peace with what's happened, integrating all these aspects, and then saying, guys, sharing, you can do it. Because in sharing, it's like, I remember I had a teacher who said, just be one link in the chain of happiness. You know, if we all link that little link together, we can all affect each other. And I think that's really precious. I think that's like the little magic I have. And you asked for one tip. I mean, for me, it's, yeah, believe in yourself, you know, believe in what you're here for, you know, like when we're born, like a lot of times we forget why we're here. And when you're born, when you're a child, you have so much innocence, so much spontaneity and playfulness. And you're like, I was born to do this in the world. And then adults are like, no, this doesn't exist. Or this can't happen. Like, if you don't know, just connect back to that. Connect back with what you used to love to do. Find that place. Maybe make that space. Make that little space to connect again. And one thing that's really been important for me is mindfulness and meditation, and making even that tiny space every day. So even if it's 1 minute before a meeting, I do that, close my eyes with my team who we work with. Every meeting we start with 1 minute, 2 minutes of silence together, and we start. It just kind of opens another space to work from, instead of, you know, and then we go into the same headspace. But yeah, taking these little tools with us into our daily life can really transform it.
Let's say somebody wants to find out more about you or connect with you. How could they do that?
So I'm redoing, speaking of all of this, it's evolution steps, but I'm redoing my website at the moment, but it's givetakelab.com. And I also do a lot on social media, on LinkedIn. So it's just Mar Michelle Häusler on Facebook. I started sharing more creative things on Instagram, just my ideas and things. So these are kind of the little avenues you can connect in with. And then the project I'm doing for young people is called Time for Changers. And Give and Take Lab, we also have an Instagram, Give Take Lab. You can find me, connect. Like, I'd be so happy to, you know, reach out. And yeah, there's videos, talks, there's a lot of resources out there. So yeah, I really hope that somehow this inspires your journey. Somehow, you know, like you can take something little from this. And yeah, I have an online course probably coming out again, like I'm relaunching. So there's little tools or ways we can keep connected and keep this work going. Thanks so much for having me here. I'm like thrilled to be here with you and to keep sharing this.